And people who had complicated relationships with Bayard Rustin, every single person said he was a phenomenal organizer.
Yeah.
And that was a very important thing to him, but also was very important just in terms of the storytelling. So you understand how this man with a group of kids in their 20s staged the largest peaceful protest the world had ever seen.
250,000
people in 8 weeks.
Each of us are taught in ways both cunning and cruel that we are inadequate, incomplete. And the easiest way to combat that feeling of not being enough is to find someone we consider less than. Less than because they are poorer than us, or because they are darker than us, or because they desire someone. Our churches and our laws say they should not desire. When we tell ourselves such lies, start to live and believe such lies, we do the work of our oppressors by oppressing ourselves. Strom Thurmond and Hoover don't give a shit about me. What they really want to destroy is all of us coming together and demanding this country change. Are they expecting my resignation?
Some are, yes.
Then they're going to have to fire me, because I will not resign. On the day that I was born black, I was also born a homosexual. They either believe in freedom and justice for all, or they do not.
Welcome to Behind the Lens. Well, he has been called many things, but notably the keeper of African American culture, to a spectacular tornado, to a three-time Tony-winning director, a playwright, an actor himself, a producer, even a curator at a museum, and so many other things. That's why they call you a spectacular tornado. You do it all. George C. Wolfe, welcome to Behind the Lens.
Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
How do you like those descriptions?
Well, I'm very fond of the tornado one.
Yeah. Does it feel like that sometimes, everything?
Well, I guess, I'm inside the tornado, so I don't, other people are receiving
Right.
the end results of all the wind. But
Yeah.
I'm in a place of calm inside of the tornado.
Yeah. Well, right now you're in your phase as a film director, and you've done quite a few. Of course, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, which won a couple of Oscars, very highly acclaimed. Actually was the last film for Chadwick Boseman, too, which was very sad, but he was spectacular in it.
Brilliant to work with, too, exceptional.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he's like, it's that combination of an extraordinarily decent, hard-working human being, and then brilliant.
Yeah.
And just brilliant and smart and available and completely present.
And could do just about anything.
Anything, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And brought a kind of an effortless style and a humanity to everything.
Yeah. Everyone thought he was going to get the Best Actor Oscar, even to the point that they put it at the end of the Oscar show.
Yeah.
They were so sure, and Anthony Hopkins came along and got it. So there was a lot of disappointment. I love Anthony Hopkins, obviously, and he was brilliant in that movie. But still, this was the last opportunity.
Well, it's also, and it has nothing to do with sentimentality. It has nothing to do with heart. But it was just like, give that gift to his family.
Yeah, exactly.
That was my thought. That was my first thought. He's
I
not going to do another role. Give that gift to his family.
And it would have been
and his wife.
Very well deserved.
Absolutely. It was brilliant work, astonishing.
That film was great, and it won like costume design and
makeup and all that.
Makeup and Roth, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love
she's
Anne.
like unbelievable.
She's extraordinary. She really is truly.
Like 92 years old?
Yeah, she's 90 right now. Yes,
still going.
And just so smart and so, every single sense of detail. I remember at one point when I was doing Iceman Cometh on Broadway with Denzel. And she said, so what the traveling salesman would do is that they would take their pants off and put them underneath the mattress, and that would be their way to press them.
Wow.
And or this store down on the Lower East Side is where anybody who brought a brown suit brought. And there's a place in the South Bronx where this guy makes these. She just her sense of detail and a sense of love of the storytelling
Yeah.
of the storytelling of costume. And I think she said at one point, she said, I had to leave. I couldn't be in Hollywood because I did not want to design beautiful dresses for movie stars.
Yeah.
You know, she's a storyteller, a brilliant one.
Really, she couldn't be Edith Head, in other words.
Yeah, hello.
Talk about beautiful dresses for movie stars. I think she did them all. Yeah, that movie was great. And now Rustin,
Yes.
which a lot of people are talking about, also for Netflix.
Yes.
This is your second in a row.
Yes, this is.
For Netflix. Is
Yes.
this a love affair with the streaming world now? Or?
Well, we'll see if there's a third.
But they do make it possible to get these projects done.
Absolutely
and
wonderful.
made.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this was also with Higher Ground, which is the President and Mrs. Obama's, production company as part of Netflix.
Yeah. Did you work with President Obama on this?
Yes, they saw various drafts of scripts. They had notes. They saw my first director's cut, and they had notes. So it was it was a great collaboration. And the notes.
What kind of notes do you get from Barack Obama?
Well, they were actually very smart ones. I wouldn't say I did all of them. I didn't agree with all of them, but a number of them I did. And because he's a good writer, he's also an exceptional writer. So once again, the storytelling equation is a part of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was interesting, very early on, one of the things that was very important to him, he wanted to make sure that it was clear that an equation that comes with being an activist is all the hard work, all the details, all the logistics that you must address. It's not just labeling yourself that you must do all the work. You must do the work, and that's and people who had complicated relationships with Bayard Rustin, every single person said he was a phenomenal organizer.
Yeah.
And that was a very important thing to him, but also it was very important just in terms of the storytelling. So you understand how this man with a group of kids in their 20s staged the largest peaceful protest the world had ever seen.
250,000
people in 8 weeks.
Which is like unbelievable.
Yeah, and there were no cell phones, and there was none of that. And I remember seeing archival footage and seeing these tables with these phone banks right in the middle of the mall, so that people could call in stories, so that the reporters could call in stories. And there were the fountains, and there were the porta potties, and there were all these teams of doctors that were positioned all around because of the heat. And it was just those incredible sense of details.
It's just amazing when you hear his story. Beyond even that, I mean, he could sing. He was on stage with Paul Robeson.
Absolutely. He was in the chorus with Paul Robeson,
well,
exactly.
And he was an athlete.
Yes.
He could sort of do it all.
He could do it all, and was an activist and a deeply committed one, and connected to every single cause. He protested the internment of the Japanese during World War II. He went to prison because he was a conscious objector. It was just this man who felt this extraordinary responsibility as a human being and as an American.
Amazing. What I love about this movie in particular, it's not using the dreaded word a biopic.
Yes.
It is very focused.
Yes.
And that's how you learn so much about this man, more than if you did a soup to nuts.
Exactly. Well, also, it's also 1960. It's as much about 1963 in many respects, in my mind, as it is about Bayard Rustin, because it was a crucial time in this country. It was in many respects a coming together, and a huge coming together before a pulling apart happened.
Right. Yeah.
This is August. By November, Kennedy's been assassinated.
Yeah.
3 weeks after the march, the 4 little girls were killed.
Wow.
So it's, but there was this incredible moment where people from all over the country took it upon themselves to take issue with segregation that was happening in the South, and they took a stand, and 250,000 of them showed up.
It's amazing. And 9 months later, the Civil Rights Act.
100% with LBJ, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, he was probably one person that could do that, coming from the South, that, could make that happen.
And also, and it was and I think it was an issue, interestingly enough, that mattered more to him
Right.
than it did to JFK.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
true. It's
yes.
interesting how history takes little twists and turns.
Exactly.
Does that interest you in doing these kinds of things? This is the second film in a row that you're talking about a real person, obviously Ma Rainey.
Well, Ma Rainey, it was a real person, but it's through August Wilson. It was through August Wilson's
Yeah.
lens, and all the other characters surrounding her were invented by him.
Yeah.
You know, but I love history. If I didn't do what I do, I would probably be a historian.
So, well, you worked in Atlanta, the museum
a
there.
museum, yeah, Center for Civil and Human Rights. Yes.
Yeah, and
I was the
created-
chief creative officer there. I staged the civil rights movement.
You did, really?
Yeah, I did, absolutely.
Wow.
And there were about 4 or 5 documentaries that were a part of that were incorporated into it. It was fun.
That's amazing. So you were fated to do this movie, I think.
Yes.
What's so interesting is quite frank, and I've been very politically involved my whole life. I didn't know him at
Nobody
all.
does. Nobody does. Nobody. No, because
He was on the cover of Life magazine. I didn't even
exactly.
know that.
A. Philip Randolph. He was on the cover, and wonderfully, strangely enough, the leaders of.
Yeah.
And they had all these photographs in color of the march as Life magazine would have, and he just history is mean. History decides who gets anointed and who does not. And that day, Martin Luther King gave this phenomenal speech that catapulted him into international acclaim.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of people gave speeches, and that's the only one we remember. And so therefore, and Bayard had a brief thing that he did, but he was it's like the pyramids are not named after the people who built them.
No, yeah.
They are
that's
not.
true.
They are
but
not.
this is like, he is now getting his due.
Exactly.
now
And it's really
finally.
sort of thrilling.
Yeah, and people are fascinated by it because the movie really is about the nuts and bolts of the organization.
Yes.
Of how that comes about, which
Yes.
is fascinating to kind of watch.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely. No, and and while he's doing that, he's also dealing with people who don't want him in his position because he's gay. He's also dealing with, which has been fictionalized, but he's dealing with this relationship that he's having with a young preacher from the South.
Right.
And so all of these, and then there's the threat of being exposed of what happened to him in Pasadena. So all of these, so the personal and the political and the intimate and the heart are all engaged while he's a part of staging this event and doing it in a small building in Harlem with a group of kids.
Yeah, and at that time, this is 1963, well, so 60 years ago, being out gay at that time was highly unusual.
Very unusual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're famously out as a director now, but it's a little different times than it was then.
Yeah, but also it's very interesting because I think the fact that he was a Quaker too,
Yeah.
and is very interesting, and the implications of what that meant, and and he was raised by his grandmother, who was a very, very committed civil rights leader as well, but she was also a Quaker, and when he told her, that he was gay, she would say, well, do what you must. Which is astonishing.
That is astonishing.
It's really astonishing. So I didn't have a lot of the Southern Baptist, condemnation that can frequently come with.
Which is really, a lot of the conflict in the movie comes with, ironically, Martin Luther King and the NAACP themselves. I mean, he had to fight these walls.
Well, but it's also because part of it is personal, but part of it is also the NAACP had proven itself brilliantly successful fighting court cases. And Brown versus Board of Education outlawed segregation, and the South said, so what? We don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And Adam Clayton Powell was very invested in fighting Congress as a politician. So they all had their way that they did it, and they didn't necessarily believe that it was a smart or practical thing to do to have that many people, particularly that many black people, descending on Washington, D.C. at the time when the two Kennedy brothers, as well as J. Edgar Hoover, did not want the march to happen at all. And and everybody was concerned that something would go wrong. And in fact, the exact opposite happened. It was a phenomenal peaceful display of what this country is capable of doing.
Yeah, and it's such a important, I don't like to use the word message because I want people to go see the movie, but it's like, it's just so important for today.
Yeah.
In this world we're living
Absolutely,
in. Every day,
absolutely.
even since this film, since I saw it at Telluride, it's getting worse. It's,
Yeah.
more divisive and.
Well, it's one of the things which I frequently said about him is that he was to me the ultimate American, and one of the qualities that I think every American needs to have is a sense of curiosity, because the curiosity about the other, curiosity about that which is different from you. Because if you don't have curiosity, what you end up falling back on is fear, and fear gives you permission to do horrible, dumb, stupid things.
Exactly.
Curiosity causes you to lean forward and to connect and to know and to find yourself in a story or in a person or an idea that doesn't necessarily look like you.
Yeah, it's so important, you have so-called leaders pushing fear, putting the dark side.
Because it's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier. That's
is.
much easier.
Yeah.
The smarter, more decent, evolved thing is to find the connection. Is to find the connection. Is to find the most evolved way of looking at a situation. It's easy to instill fear.
Yeah.
A
movie like this can help.
Absolutely. We hope so. We hope
right?
so.
Yeah. I got to talk about the cast. First of all, a lot of what I'm going to call your stock company now, because you have a lot of people that were in Ma Rainey's.
Yes, absolutely.
Here in the cast. Wonderful, wonderful actors, Michael Potts, Glenn Turman, Coleman Domingo. Obviously,
Yes.
Coleman Domingo is Rustin. Was
Yes.
that always in your head?
Well, it was always in the conversation, but I like to let things germinate and then evolve until it becomes inevitable, and that's sort of what happens. So probably if I was being completely honest, I would say I was always thinking about Coleman, but I like to not know. The time period of creativity where you don't know what's next is so important, because that's when the ideas are coming from a deeper place.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I wanted to make sure as we were in Pittsburgh scouting locations, and as the script was continuing to evolve and it was becoming more compressed and more just about the march, that I was also thinking about casting and thinking, Audrey would be a perfect Ella Baker.
Right.
Audrey
McDonald.
Audrey McDonald, yeah. Glenn Turman would be a brilliant A. Philip Randolph. And Coleman, and so it was all
Rock.
Chris Rock, exactly. And who looks like exactly.
Do you ever worry about casting somebody like Chris Rock, who's so recognizable and so known for being Chris Rock? He's a really good actor.
Yes.
I don't know, if he always gets the credit for that.
Well, but we had a 2-week rehearsal process, and so we began. we go on the journey so that therefore everybody feels like they are a part of the same film.
Yeah.
They are part, and in this case, very specifically, they are part of the same period.
Yeah.
That was ridiculously important, because I didn't want anybody, I didn't want to telegraph, the next century at all.
Oh yeah, no. How difficult was it to recreate that period? I mean, you're working on a budget here, this is.
Well, that's the interesting thing about working in Pittsburgh, because not necessarily a lot of New York looks like 1963 anymore.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. You could find, we found that one building where the headquarters were for the organization of the march. Nothing else around it. Nothing else was around it, but that building was perfect. We found this series of buildings, Penn South, which is where Bayard lived, which were created for the women who worked in the garment district and their families, and were in the 20s on the west side in New York City. And we found, or Mark Ricker, the production designer, found these buildings that looked exactly like Penn South. We had to do a couple of things in post to alter them, but we kept on finding 1963 New York in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and recreating this whole march and all of that, and the way you chose to shoot it.
Well, the march, we filmed the speeches. We built the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Pittsburgh, and
Yeah.
we filmed them in Pittsburgh, so that therefore I could have time to calibrate performances.
Right, yeah.
And then then finally in August, when it was 117 degrees, because we're very clever that way.
Yeah.
We like to torture ourselves in the heat. We actually filmed there so I could get that sense of scale and also the horizon. That's the thing which is so extraordinary about DC. But you got New York where there is no horizon. There's just
Right.
building on top of building, and then all of a sudden you're there, and you can see forever, and it's
compare
just wonderful.
It's amazing. Do you love doing movies? Do you like this medium? Because you're such a creature of the theater, as everyone knows, and I always talk to theater people, and they go like, "Well, there's nothing like theater," but
Well, there's nothing like aspects of theater, and there's nothing like filmmaking, and
Right.
so I remember when Lackawanna Blues was my
Right.
first movie.
HBO, yeah.
HBO, and there was a scene where this character was pushing a shopping cart down the hallway as she was delivering sheets in this boarding house, and I just remember at one point saying, "Cut some grooves, cut the wheels, cut the wheels. Can you cut the rubber on the wheels so it's slightly off?"
Right.
Because everybody in this rooming house was off, and so and they went, "Okay," and they did it, and then all of a sudden it changed the look and the feel and the rhythm of the scene.
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh crap, I like this stuff." Oh God. I like playing in this form. And so I love because I have this deep belief that there's nothing as a neutral choice.
Right.
Every choice you make is either enhancing the story or distracting
Yeah.
from the story. And so I love the demand of detail. I always have a rehearsal period, a 2-week rehearsal period prior, so that I can do the grounding work and with the actors and evolve a sense of vocabulary.
That's important because a lot of movies, especially indie movies,
Yeah.
they don't have the time for that.
Yeah, but I
You got it.
require it.
Yeah, I love the versatility that you allow yourself to do. I mean, you win a Tony for Angels in America, and then shortly thereafter you win another Tony for Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk, which was a huge hit, completely different.
Well, I like to,
Elaine Stritch. movie.
Exactly. No, because I don't want to. It's like once you live in one, you live in one town, now move to another town. I don't want to keep, I've been in this town. I know I know that.
Yeah.
Now I want to go somewhere else. And I have this saying that I say to myself, which is, anytime I come to a wall, an obstacle or something that I don't know, there's a smarter version of me on the other side.
Wow.
Tobias Schleichler, again, I always mispronounce his last name, my DP, who I love dearly. At one point, on Ma Rainey, he would go, at one point he said, but we're in that basement. We're in that basement so much. I don't know how to make that work. I said, if you knew how to make the work, then you shouldn't do the movie. The fact that you don't know how to make it work is the reason to do the movie, so we can figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like being in the presence of that which you don't know is thrilling.
Yeah.
That's where work happens. That's where the fun is. That's where the danger is. That's where the failure is.
Right.
But also that's where the possibility is as well.
And that's where the art comes in.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And then you did one after, but you haven't done theater in about 3 years, 4 years, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, you're going back. You always go back, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, come on.
I'm probably in the process of committing to something. I'm in the process once again.
Okay. Well, we always want to see you go back to the theater, our movies, or wherever this whirling, spectacular tornado lands next. George C. Wolfe, thank you for joining us on Behind the Lens.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.